Previously, in our discussion of cellular respiration, we looked at glycolysis that occurred in the cytoplasm. We also discussed pyruvate oxidation, also known as the PrEP step, which occurs across the outer and inner mitochondrial membrane. And we looked at the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle that occurs in the matrix of the mitochondria. Now we're going to look at step 4, the electron transport chain, followed by chemiosmosis and oxidative phosphorylation. The very first event that happens in the electron transport chain is the arrival of NADH with its 2 electrons to a complex named NADH dehydrogenase. It gives off a proton and it is oxidized into NAD+. This proton will be pumped through the NADH dehydrogenase complex into the intermembrane space. We also see that 2 electrons are released here, as this is an oxidation, and it is transferred to the dehydrogenase complex. The electrons will be pumped through the next complex as well. This next complex is coenzyme Q or ubiquinone, and this is where FADH2 will release its electrons to be oxidized into FAD. The electrons will continue on their path and next be pumped through a hydrogen channel called the BC1 complex. When this happens, a proton is also pumped through this hydrogen channel into the intermembrane space. The electrons will continue on their path and be pumped through cytochrome C next. And then after that, they will reach the cytochrome oxidase complex. Hydrogen ions are also pumped through the cytochrome oxidase complex. At this complex, oxygen serves as the final electron acceptor. So oxygen will be reduced. It will combine with 2 protons here in the matrix, and a water molecule will result. Chemiosmosis will follow after this as the hydrogen ions are pumped through the ATP synthase enzyme. We had a high concentration of hydrogen ions here in the intermembrane space because remember, every time we had a hydrogen pumped through these complexes, they stayed in the intermembrane space and accumulated over there. So we will need 3 of these hydrogen ions to be pumped through the ATP synthase for every ATP molecule that is to be made. Adenosine diphosphate will pick up an inorganic phosphate and it will produce 1 molecule of ATP. So because oxygen is present and chemiosmosis can follow, this type of ATP production is known as oxidative phosphorylation. So let's look at the energy yield. Previously, we learned that 2 ATPs result from glycolysis, 2 ATPs from the prep reaction and the Krebs cycle, and now, theoretically, from 10 NADH molecules and 2 FADH molecules that arrive here, we can produce quite a lot of ATP. We can produce theoretically 34 ATP, but the actual yield is only 32 ATP. And that is due to a leaky inner membrane. If we add this 32 plus the 2 from glycolysis plus the 2 from the Krebs cycle and the prep step, we end with our 36 ATP. And that is our total yield after cellular respiration has occurred in an aerobic environment.